Okay, time for 6x7. Now, this is my favourite of the medium formats, and I think it's the most fun to shoot. It's big. You only get 10 shots for each roll of 120, but they are big shots and they hold a huge amount of detail. Now, I'll put a quick size comparison chart up. You can see that you can fit 5 35mm frames over each one of these 6x7 negatives. They are, they hold a huge amount of information. Again, similar to the previous videos, the 6x7 cam is split into the system cameras. They're bulky, they're huge, they really just belong on a tripod. And then there are some lighter, but no less big alternatives. You've got things like the Mamiya 7, the Plaubel Makina, and the Pentax 67. But straight up, everything in this category is big. The smallest, the Mamiya 7, you're still going to know when it's hanging around your neck. Let's start with the first two cameras that everyone finds when they Google, I want to buy a 6x7 camera, are the Mamiya RB and RZ67. I'll chuck them both up. They, the black one is the more modern plasticky RZ, but it's considered the better one. Now, the RB, let's start with that, is heavy, and it is so heavy. I, 2 or 3 years ago, made the mistake of looking at it in a video, looking at it online and saying, yeah, I could just about afford that. Looks like a good 6x7 camera. And I took it back to the shop within 24 hours and they laughed at me. And I was like, this thing is ridiculous. You can't really carry it anywhere. And that's coming from, I've used Linhof large format cameras, which are as big as a toaster. The RB, it weighs a ton, and so do all its lenses, at least with large format. The rest of the kit's relatively light. Now, RBs can go down as low as about £350. So if you want to get one on a budget to use in the studio, don't let the weight stop you. Obviously, that only matters if you're moving around with it. RB stands for rotating back, which is actually quite a luxury when the camera weighs so much. You're never having to turn it on its side. You can just spin the back and switch between portrait and landscape. You can do that between shots. It doesn't lock you in for a whole roll. Lenses are pretty good. They're all leaf shutter, and actually most of these large formats, most of these 6x7 cameras are most of these 6x7 cameras are leaf shutter, which is fantastic for studio use because your flash will sync at any speed. The shutters go up to about 1/500, 1/400, so you can really kill ambient light if you use a powerful strobe with that kind of fast shutter speed. So they are very specialized for it. A lot of magazine photographers, editorial portraiture, that kind of thing is done on these, or now it's done on digital, but it used to be done on these. If the RB looks a little bit too clunky, heavy, kind of boat anchory for you, then the next one up is the RZ, which is the kind of younger brother. It's not quite as robust, but that's because they've exchanged some of the metal used in the construction of the RB for kind of tough plastic. Now, they are a little bit more expensive, but you can save a bit of money by going for one of the earlier versions. They're split into the 1, the 2, and the 2D, which is specifically for use with digital backs, so I'd stay away from that. They go for well over £1,000, which is crazy. The Pro 1 and the Pro 2, the difference is that the shutter speed doesn't give you half stops on the 1, and it does on the 2. But that is actually a bit of a moot point, because the lenses, and all the Mamiya lenses are absolutely fantastic. The lenses have half stops on their aperture rings, so you don't really need it. Might be important if you're using a very, very sensitive slide film in sort of certain lighting conditions. But save a bit of money, go for the Pro 1. It's pretty much just as good. The only other difference is that the back on the Pro 1 doesn't show you a frame counter when it's in the vertical position, but you can just look at the horizontal position one, which is only sort of 90 degrees away. So yeah, there's not much in it. The RB and the RZ are fantastic studio cameras, but they really shouldn't even be considered for outdoor use, especially hiking. The one famous picture that came from the RZ with the 65mm lens is that nice green field which the Windows XP computers had as their wallpaper. Yeah, so that's the RZ's claim to fame. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Next up with the 6x7s is the Pentax 6x7. It's a bit like the Pentagon 6 from the previous video. It's like some East German scientist injected it with some serum to make it win Olympic medals. It is, I got a Canon AE1 here. It's this, but instead of stretching up to here, it comes up to here. It's massive. You definitely need two hands to hold it. Some of them have this comically oversized wooden grip that goes on the side, and that kind of helps you lug it about. They're really heavy. They're not as bad as the RB67, but they're sort of noticeably chunky bits of kit. Now, the Pentax is modular in the sense that you can replace the prism with either a waist level finder, a metered prism, or just a plain unmetered eye level finder. It's a bit like the Plaubel in that sense, because you can't take the back off, so you're only ever going to get 10 shots out of it, 20 if you use weird discontinued 220 film. But yeah, that's a bit of a problem. You're going to have to open it and reload it relatively often if you're shooting it at any sort of real speed. The other problem with the Pentax is that it has an enormous mirror in it. Just because of the size of the negative, it has obviously the 6x7 negative is covered by a 6x7 mirror that has to flap out of the way. It does make hand holding it difficult at lower shutter speeds. People say you should stay above 1.125 when you're using it because it just slaps, and yeah, it can really kill your sharpness if you don't brace yourself against something. That said, I've seen people pull it off at 1/60th, 1/30th even. So if you've got steady hands and you sort of lean against something, you might be all right. The other big drawback of the large mirror is the sync speed with flash is atrocious. I think you get 1/30th, and that's it. So you're going to have trouble with ambient once you start using it with strobes. There are a lot of editions of the Pentax 6x7. So there's the in order you have the Pentax 6x7, then you have the Pentax 6x7 MU. That stands for mirror up mode, and that actually helps for landscape photographers or tripod photographers. That helps you kill the shutter slap. So what you do is you set your camera up, compose it, meter it, everything's ready to go. And then before pressing your shutter cable, you just flick the switch and it moves the mirror out of the way so that when you do press the shutter, all that moves is the curtain. I recommend getting one of those if you are going to be using shutter speeds between about, let's say, a 60th and 2 seconds on a tripod. If you do anything longer than 2 seconds, it kind of averages out at the end. After the 6x7 MU, they actually sort of modernized it and they came out with the Pentax 6.7. So they dropped the X out of the title, and those ones are more modern. They are more expensive, but apparently they are slightly better. There's a 6.7 II, which is, yeah, it's a bit more expensive again. Prices for the 6.7 II probably start around 1,400, 1,500, but you could get a 6x7 MU, which is the one I recommend you go for as a first 6x7, for in the region of £600. So it's half the price for the non 6.7 model. The old one is obviously cheaper. The lenses are great. The famous lens that everyone gets for the 6x7 is the 105mm f2.4. The depth of field on that is insanely shallow, and it's actually a very small, compact build. It gives the camera quite a nice sort of ergonomic weight to it for that kind of really shallow depth of field, portrait. Kind of, you can carry it around with you just about, and it is heavy. There are a lot of Pentax lenses. There are even some crazy zooms that go up to 500mm, but I'd recommend staying away from those. The ones worth noting are the 90mm. Now there's actually there's a 90mm with a leaf shutter, which is pretty useful for flash sync, so that's something to note. There's also 165mm with a leaf shutter, so it's not you're not tied into just one lens for flash work. Although it is not quite as simple as using the RZ, which every lens works. The workaround is a bit of messing around with the mirror. Yeah, the Pentax lenses are great, and they are just a little bit more easy to get out into the wild with than the RB. Next on the list, we've got the Bronica GS-1, which is an interesting. It's essentially a slightly smaller RB67. They don't have the rotating back, but they are essentially. If you've watched the previous videos, we had the ETRS and then the SQA, and then now we've got the GS1. It shoots 6x7. It's kind of unknown as a camera, and that brought its price down a bit. I reckon you could get a pretty decent GS1 setup for around £400, which would essentially give you a lighter weight RB without a rotating back. Something to look into. The accessories are actually a bit rarer for the GS1 because they're just quite unknown. So if you find a set, go for it. You'll be set for your 6x7 needs. But if not, maybe the RB is the one to look at. That's something to bear in mind. Next, the Plaubel Makina. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right. This is interesting. It's a folding 6x7 with a Nikon 80mm lens, and it sort of defies the logic of the heavy format. You can put one of these in a bag, and it won't weigh you down much more than your average modern DSLR. So these things are they're incredible. They're very sharp. The lenses get a lot of praise, and although they have gone up in price a bit recently, they are ideal. The only drawback is that the lens is fixed. So if you're suddenly looking for a wide lens, you're out of luck with the Plaubel. Next and lastly, this is going to be a much quicker video than I expected. The Mamiya 7 is like the sort of the top tier. Everyone wants one. They're so expensive. They're going for over £2,000 if they're mint now. So you really might have missed that bandwagon. But there's a Mamiya 7 II and Mamiya 7 I. Not too much difference between them. They're both metered. They're both rangefinders. They're very similar to the 6, but if you're using wide-angle lenses with the 7, you do need to use external viewfinders. So that can be another hidden cost that can sting you. Mamiya 7s are very light. They fold up. I mean, they are the ideal ones to travel with. But yeah, they're rare and expensive. So they kind of occupy their own little market segment. Now, if you're going for your first 6x7 camera, and it's going to be your first medium format camera, and it's going to last you a while, I would go for the Pentax 6x7 MU. I've had one. They're so much fun. Just you're going to start playing with a shutter. You click it, bang. Picture's great, and it's a very noticeable step up from 6x6. I know it's mostly psychological because of because it's only 1 extra centimetre down the side of your negative. But I always find myself cropping 6x6, so it actually I rarely crop 6x7, so it actually gives me that added bonus of not being cropped, which obviously translates into a larger negative. That said, the Pentax 6.7 is the all-round champion, but if you want to use flash in a studio and you're going to put your camera on a tripod, screw the plate in and never take it off, you want to go for one of the Mamiyas, the RB and the RZ respectively. Yeah, if you can find an RZ, then by all means go for it. If the price is right for you, they are a bit better, their lenses are a bit better. But if you see the RB and you're never going to take it outside, you've got to lug it home, maybe get a rolling suitcase to get it home in. But you set that thing up and it will take great pictures. That's just about wrapped up 6x7. I'm glad I managed to do this one quicker because the last video stretched on a bit. If you've got any questions, please leave me a comment. I'm going to make one more video in this series, which is going to be about the weird formats that come outside of the 3 I've already done. So we've got 6x8, 6x9 and 6x17 in the next video, but that should be even shorter than this one. So thanks for watching. The link to the weird cameras is just over my shoulder.